Hello, everyone. This is Cassidy. Later on, you'll be hearing from Rae. But today we're going to talk about gender expression. So throughout this presentation, we're going to touch on a few different topics. So I made a cute little roadmap to kind of show what each part of our presentation will be. All right, so getting right into it. What is gender? The formal definition is that gender is the internal classification people give themselves in relation to who they are and what they want to be addressed as. In much simpler language, gender is essentially how people feel they associate to feminine and masculine traits and how they choose to describe themselves. Over here on the right, you're going to see a graphic from the textbook, and it shows an interesting and more in-depth model of the spectrum of gender. Gender was originally thought to be linear, and one could be more masculine or more feminine. However, this quadrant type of spectrum shows the fact that people can express both masculine and feminine traits. An example of a traditionally masculine trait might be that someone's more assertive in their opinions. However, they can also have a traditionally feminine trait of being very caring and nurturing towards people in their lives. A person can express each of these traits equally. So just as people are multidimensional, it makes sense that our model of gender is more than just a simple line. Gender expression. So gender expression is the external traits one adds to themselves to express or enhance their gender. This is something most people do unconsciously, yet everyone does it in some way. Since your gender is how you identify, then ways of gender expression can also be seen as self-expression. So I want you to take a moment to think about different ways that people express their gender. What are some ways that you express your gender? I'm going to pause for a moment so that you guys can think. All right, you guys good? Let's see some examples. So if you wrote something along the lines of clothing, hairstyle, makeup, speech, tonality, and pronouns, then you're on the right track. These are just a few ways that people use to express themselves and therefore their gender. As I stated previously, these are things that almost all people use to express themselves. Now, pronouns. Those express gender. Let's talk a little bit more about those. So pronouns are what people can call you and how you define yourself. They're the way people address themselves and others. This is in relation to their gender and comfort, considering some people choose to use different pronouns in different social situations based on how safe they feel.
Let's take a moment to think about the differences between sex, gender, orientation, and expression. Did you have enough time? Gender is your internal classification. This is how you would define yourself and how you want others to define you. Sex is chromosomal. Expression are the traits you show. And orientation is who you are attracted to, be it romantic or physical. These traits can flow on a spectrum, be it masculine, feminine, androgynous, or anywhere in between or outside the gender binary. The upcoming video explains this same concept. So let's take a moment to watch it.
In order to get on the same page about LGBT youth homelessness, let's first talk about the differences between sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression. They are all different. We think of each existing on a spectrum. Being on a spectrum means that there are more than just two ways to be. There's a whole range of ways to be. Sexual orientation describes an individual's emotional and/or physical attraction to another person or people. Gender identity refers to a person's innate identification as a man, woman, neither, both, or some other gender. A person's gender may or may not correspond to the sex assigned to them at birth. While gender identity is someone's understanding of their own gender, gender expression refers to the way that a person communicates their gender to the world. It includes all of the external characteristics and behaviors that are socially defined as either masculine or feminine, such as dress, grooming, mannerisms, speech patterns, and social interactions. Social or cultural norms can vary widely, and some characteristics that may be accepted as masculine, feminine, or neutral in one culture may be assessed differently in another. It is important to note that someone's gender expression may or may not align with traditional perceptions of gender identity. Again, gender is a spectrum. It's important to remember that there are more than just two ways to be.
Now, what does cultural norms have to do with gender expression? Well, your gender expression will be perceived differently by different people. And cultural norms are the generalized rules a society with common viewpoints uses to dictate what is quote unquote normal or abnormal. These norms aren't necessarily bad in nature, but can set a precedence for stereotypes, which can be generalized over all social groups, be it gender, race, age, social class, expression, etc. How does it do that? Well, it does it by putting things into categories. And these categories are gender conformity and gender nonconformity. When someone's expression aligns with stereotypical traits associated with their gender, it is considered gender conformity. When someone deviates, that is where it's considered gender nonconformity. Now, it's not necessarily good or bad in nature, whereas in one culture, certain clothing or traits might be considered completely acceptable. In another, it might be a deviation from what is normal. So that's a lot of words to say that gender norms are relative, and your expression is a part of who you are. To summarize, gender expression is how a person expresses their identity. This can be done in multiple ways, through clothing choices, the growth or removal of hair, makeup, pronouns, body modification, and more. Gender expression is a way to express traits to others about oneself. Take a moment to think about how you express your gender and what you may want to convey to others in doing so. Thank you.